Welcome back to the Dershow, the Get Trump Posse. Obviously, I named my book after this posse, Get Trump. The Get Trump Posse has now come up with a new way of twisting, distorting, and destroying the United States Constitution in order to get Trump. Not satisfied with going after him on absolutely made-up cases like in the New York case, where he's been indicted for refusing to disclose the payment of hush money in a corporate form, something that no one in history has ever done or been accused of not doing. Moving to the case in Florida, he waived a piece of classified material. Some people call it a smoking gun. I call it a smoking cigarette butt. It's so weak and it's so small. Even if the case is there, what does it prove? That he was a braggart and he waived a piece of classified material in front of somebody. To the two stronger cases on the theory, but not on the facts of the law, the one in the District of Columbia and the one in Georgia. They've now changed tack. The leader of the posse has always been Professor Lawrence Tribe, who will misread the Constitution in any possible way, stretch it, distort it, make up the law as long as he can get Trump. I mean, he's a civil disobedient, basically. He's prepared to violate the law, mislead the American public, mislead his students. He doesn't teach now, but his many former students and people who admire him. And he's given a pass because the end is get Trump, and the means, we don't care about the means. We don't care if the Constitution is violated. We don't care if the rule of law is ignored. We don't care if precedents are set that will make it harder to have adequate votes in future elections. We just don't care. It's like Hitler is about to be elected, and we can do anything in our power to do it. Well, look, if it were Hitler, I have to tell you, if it were Hitler, I would do everything, including walk up to him with a gun and shoot him between the eyes and surrender. That's how strongly I feel about Hitler. But Donald Trump is not Hitler, and I'm not Goebbels or Himmler, which is the way some people think I am because I defended him on the floor of the Senate. Oh my God, what could be worse? Well, the only thing that could be worse is John Adams, I guess, defending the people who conducted the Boston Massacre. How can anybody ever forgive that? Well, he ended up being the president. I'm not in the running, so you don't have to forgive me or vote for me. But I certainly like to think of myself in the tradition of lawyers who have defended people who are extremely unpopular. As you know, I don't support Trump. I want to be able to vote for him, against him for the third time. And I want you to be able to vote for him for the third time if you choose to do that, but not under the new Tribe interpretation of the Constitution. So he has an article out just the last couple of days ago with a judge before whom I have argued, and who is a very result-oriented judge. And he's result-oriented again in this case. He doesn't like Trump, and so he's prepared to rewrite the Constitution to permit Trump to be disqualified from running without even having been convicted of a crime. Listen again. These people, Lawrence Tribe, Judge Lutek, are prepared to argue that Donald Trump is already disqualified from running for president without having been convicted of any crime based on their misreading of the Constitution. So here's the 14th Amendment. As you probably imagine, I essentially know it by heart, as I do the Constitution. This is my version of the Constitution. I wrote an introduction. It's available on hot books. And it's, it's the Constitution. And they point to the 14th Amendment. 14th Amendment is famous because it provides for the equal protection of the laws. It's great. And the equal protection of the laws is an important part of our American system of governance. But then it has, after proclaiming broadly what the rights are, it has several provisions that deal only with the Civil War. and with the aftermath of the Civil War, because as we know, the 14th Amendment was really the peace treaty for ending the Civil War. And Section 3 of the 14th Amendment provides that no person shall be eligible to vote, to run for anything, or even to vote, by the way, but to run for anything, state office, federal office, from town clerk to President of the United States, if he shall have engaged in insurrection and rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. It's so obvious when you read this that this was limited, it was intended to be limited to people who have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States during the Civil War. In fact, it's followed by Section 4 of the same 14th Amendment, which talks about payment for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, meaning the Civil War, and that nobody can make any claim for the loss of emancipation of any slave. Well, obviously, that has to relate to the Civil War. Once the Civil War was over, there were no enslaved people to be emancipated. There were people to be treated fairly under the equal protection laws of the Constitution, but there were no emancipation of slaves. Nobody could be paid for that. Obviously, these provisions are intended to relate to people who fought in the Civil War. The best evidence that it was not intended to be a general disqualification for running for President of the United States is another provision of the Constitution, the impeachment provision, which I am very familiar with, maybe more than anybody else today living. I have done all the research on the impeachment provision because I obviously represented the Constitution on behalf of Donald Trump when he was unconstitutionally impeached, and we won the case in front of the Senate. And so I know quite a bit about impeachment. I've read every word of the debates in the Constitutional Convention and in the state constitutional conventions. And, you know, my arguments, people agree with them, disagree with them, but they're well-founded in fact. But whatever you think of my arguments, the Constitution itself provides exquisite procedures for how you can get rid of a president who has been elected. You have to get 2/3 of the Senate after getting a majority of the House. The Chief Justice of the United States must preside. It's so clear that these procedural safeguards are designed to prevent the easy removal of an elected president, even if he's charged with treason and even if he's convicted of treason. He can't be removed unless these procedures are followed. Impeachment by the House, conviction by the Senate, in front of the Chief Justice by a 2/3 vote of the United States Senate. Do you think that the framers of the Fourth Amendment, knowing about how difficult it is to get rid of a treasonous president, would have made it so easy to prevent the election of a president? So easy, it doesn't even have a procedure. It doesn't say you have to be charged with a crime, convicted of a crime. All it says is you have to have engaged in insurrection or rebellion or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. If you're going to have a procedure that's used in eternity for the future, an enduring constitution, the longest enduring constitution in the history of humankind, you have to have procedures. You just can't say, whoops, a Secretary of State can do it. What's Tribe's answer? Well, yeah, a Secretary of State can disqualify him. A governor can disqualify him. You know, what, 1/3 of our states now are governed by Democrats, 2/3 by Republicans. That would mean that the Republican governor of Texas could disqualify Joe Biden from running for president on the ground that his actions in opening the borders of Texas constitute some kind of an insurrection or rebellion. It's absurd. Of course it's absurd. But the point that can be made is that there's no process. Absurd results would be allowed to be accomplished under the Tribe analysis. It's just unthinkable that framers of a constitutional amendment would be so sloppy as to omit the important consideration. Well, what does Tribe say? What do others say? Well, no, but there are other things in the Constitution's qualifications for president that are self-enforcing. You have to be 35 years old. Really? Does that really require trial by jury? You have to be 35 years old. You need a process for that. Just look up the birth certificate. But then they say, what about being a natural born citizen? At the time of the framing, nobody thought there'd be a dispute about that. The provisions are clear, where you have to be born, when you have to be born, even if you were not born in the United States before a certain date. It's okay. Nobody imagined that Barack Obama would be challenged on his natural born status. And can you imagine if a Secretary of State had disqualified Obama? Who do you think the first person challenging him on constitutional grounds would have been? Lawrence Tribe. He would have changed his mind. He would have had a completely different argument, because Tribe's argument all depend on the results. He is not a person who reads the Constitution consistently and neutrally. First, he comes to the result. I want Trump out, so I'll read the Constitution this way. I want Obama in, so I'll read the Constitution this way. That's his modus operandi, and that is his method of interpreting the Constitution. Result first, then you analyze the case to make sure you get to that result. Alice in Wonderland, verdict first, execution, then the trial comes last of all. And that's why I've challenged Professor Tribe to debate me on this issue at Harvard Law School, on my podcast, on any station. No, he goes instead to CNN, where he gets adoration and support, no hard questions. Just, yes, sir, Professor Tribe. Judge Ludick introduces him as the most distinguished constitutional law professor in America. No. He's not a scholar when it comes to the Constitution. He's an advocate when it comes to the Constitution. The Constitution means what he wants it to mean. There is no objective meaning. It means something different today than it will tomorrow, depending on which foot the shoe is on. If somebody were to try, if this had started with an attempt to try to disqualify Joe Biden, I assure you the Tribe would be on the other side of this case. I would be on the same side, because my views are neutral and objective, and they don't vary with whose ox is being gored or which foot the shoe is on. I apply a neutral standard in reading the Constitution, and I wish more people would do that. There is just no way of reading this constitutional provision as enabling a Secretary of State or a governor to disqualify the leading candidate at the request of his opponent's political party. That's what it comes down to. What it comes down to is Tribe says that any Democratic Secretary of State, any Democratic governor, Governor Newsom of California, Governor of New York, Governor of New Jersey, whoever, can suddenly declare that Donald Trump can't run for president. I guess it follows that the governor or the Secretary of State of Texas can do the same thing. With Joe Biden, we're going to get anarchy if that's allowed to happen. But Tribe doesn't care, and Judge Ludick doesn't care. What they care about is get Trump. Get Trump by any means. Trump is Hitler. Trump can't be allowed to be president. Get Trump. Well, they're getting Trump. They're trying to get Trump. They're trying to get him disqualified. But by getting Trump disqualified, they're disqualifying you from voting against him, as I want to do, or for him, as many of you probably want to do. The ultimate check and balance on tyranny is not secretaries of state making partisan decisions. It's the vote of the people themselves. And this procedure that's being concocted, invented by Tribe and others, is the most anti-democratic procedure I've seen in my 60 years of practicing and teaching law. The idea that a small group of elitist party hacks from the opposing party can prevent the leading candidate from running, let me tell you, they've just earned a new banana. We're now up to 4.